First of all, is a routine necessary? Yes, that's the simple answer to that question. But then, if you take stock of your time available, when will you slot in some kind of spiritual practice? And what do we mean by spiritual practice? First of all, we have to get used to the idea that there's no separation between secular and spiritual. You have one life and one purpose, central purpose. But within that is an individual purpose, of course. We are individually designed to play our part on the stage and play it in a harmonious way that has as a central theme the benefit of everyone. That makes for a very busy life. So how to fit things in? And very often we think that the dedicated spiritual practice, such as meditation, repetition of japa, prayer, and so on and so forth, is maybe less of a priority than the rest of our life. We have to get used to the idea that we have a central purpose in life, and that is our priority. Imagine living life, the Viveka Shuddhamani tells us, is very difficult to have gotten a human birth. And having gotten a human birth through many, many eons of births, we are fortunate, very, very lucky, to have been born as a human and to have been born as at least somebody who's come across the principles of the Vedas, the Vedanta, universal truth, and more fortunate to have a male body. Now, we'll stop there because people will start protesting and saying Shankaracharya, the purported author of this, is a sexist and so on, and no regard for women's rights and so on. But it's a fact that even today, men are privileged. And so particularly in Africa, Asia, and countries like this, I know in Africa where I come from, the man goes and he looks after the cattle and comes back and drinks beer. The woman has to attend to all the agriculture, as well as the children, as well as the food, no time at all. So universally, I don't think women are in as privileged a position, hence the urge for human rights, or gender equality, and hence also the teachings of Ramakrishna, whose life and teachings demonstrate the importance of not only honoring women, but seeing the Divine Mother in, through, and as every single female form. So sometimes there's a disparity between the teaching and between the practice and the principle. And that brings us then to a point where we see how can we match the two things. So we certainly have to be aware that we start off with learning the principles. Of course, that doesn't mean to say we ignore the practice. And the idea of a wavering mind is common, and the subject is brought up in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita by Arjuna. So he tells us, he asks us this question, all this fixing the mind on God and all that, that's all very well, but he says, Yoyam yogas toya prokta samyena madhusudana itasyaham na pasyami kanchala dvam stitam stiram. I do not see how this steady mind can be kept up because the senses are turbulent. He says, Chanchalam hi manaha Krishna pramati balal durtam. For the mind is restless, turbulent, strong, and obstinate. I think we all recognize these characteristics. It seems to me as hard to control as the wind. So now, how does regular practice contribute toward a solution? We know that if we want to have any success in life, there has to be some regularity, some rhythm. In yogic terms, this is called pranayama. That means directing energy in a single direction. Swami Purnananda, who's living in the beginning of a technological age, will use the electricity as an example. Electricity is electrons moving in the same direction. Otherwise, they're all scattered. When it's made to move in the same direction, then we have an element of harmony. So what should the spiritual practice be for a householder? Getting up in the morning is an important start. And that often means regulating our sleep, so going to bed a little bit earlier, making sure that we have a good sleep. Science has told us, or research has told us more accurately, that 7 hours is ideal. 12 hours is not. So 7 hours, if you have 7 hours, the problem is sleep is not a continuous, motionless event. We toss and turn every night, and if you lie down and relax and do a kind of yoga nidra process, relaxing every limb of the body and so on and so forth, you will find that this is more valuable probably than sleep itself. We go through a cycle, and that cycle comprises of dream, and then a moment of dreamless sleep, and then back to dream. It starts off as we go to sleep, we drift into a kind of amorphous state, half dream, half waking. And then we go through a cycle, rapid eye movement physiologically, called dream. Even dogs have it, they chase rabbits and so on. You can see their legs move. And then we go into this state of deep sleep, what is registered in our Vedanta philosophy as the dream state or dream consciousness, third state of consciousness. And then that cycle repeats about 4 or 5 times a night. And each time you turn. So sleep is necessary, of course. Dreaming, they say, is also necessary. Deep sleep is necessary. But if you have anxiety at the back of your mind, even sleep becomes difficult. So then we have to question, where does this disturbance of the mind come from? And we know in our psychology it comes really from a concern about what we want, and as opposed to that, what we are pulling against. For example, supposing you have a person who fundamentally has a fear of rejection. Then that becomes a fundamental fear that creates anxiety with every anticipated future moment. Will I be rejected? Will I be rejected? So what's the flaw in that kind of approach? Firstly, it's registering the human body-mind complex as I. That's the first difficulty, rather than an instrument. It's saying that the habit level can simply take over. And that is why what is meant by the turbulence of the senses, because in order for self-preservation, avoidance of this fear, we structure our lives in such a way that we are concerned. We are constantly worried, and the turbulent senses are there. So how to develop concentration? Concentration is the key. And as I mentioned, it begins with regularity. And it comes back to your question, how can a householder regulate their life in the midst of all these kinds of activities? Fortunately, the system of yoga comes to our rescue and says, most of us in this modern life are concerned with activity. Then we may as well use that, since the whole central theme of our life is spirituality, then we can transform all activities into something useful to us where we don't have any stress whatsoever. Now I mentioned regularity then, getting up early in the morning sufficiently so that you can sit down for a certain period of time and make a preparation for the day. Charging your battery for the day. The quality of that will be extremely important. Now, supposing typically your practice will be concerned with prayer, repetition of a mantra which we call japa, and meditation. And the first 2 things are preparation for the last one. So let us discuss japa, for example. in the context of dedicated spiritual practice, let's say in the morning and in the evening. The evening is reserved for recollection, gathering all the experience of the day and settling them down. And if you're a devotee, offering them to the chosen ideal, your most beloved. But it's not that you visit the Lord of the universe, let's say, in the morning and the evening. It's not that God abandons you either during the day. And God never abandons you, and we shouldn't abandon God either. That means we should always make an effort to tune our attention into the glory of the divine self that religion calls God. That means every activity that we do involves that most beloved. You can be God's co-worker using his instrumentation called body and mind. And so after intense preparation, using japa. Well, what is japa? Japa, the repetition of a mantra. What is the mantra? It's the sound embodiment of your chosen ideal coming to you, and is designed to make an instant connection, in which case it is a meditative repetition and practice. And that means it is useless unless it's accompanied by feeling. And you can see how much feeling is going into this. The quality of your feeling determines on the usefulness and quality of your japa, which after all is calling on the divine, inviting the divine into the heart, saying, come. In puja, we have hand motions for that. Please come, welcome, please stay, please sit, please be with me. All these are accompanied by hand gestures in the Hindu puja. So we have to adopt the same thing. Come. Come from, as it were, the outside to the inside. We can start by thanking for the sleep and so on, as I wake up. And of course, when I attend yoga conferences, there's a misunderstanding. When do you do your meditation and so on? Oh, I do that after my yoga exercise. No, it has to be your priority. You do that after bathing, putting fresh clothing on, making all these preparations, lighting a lamp, doing a little ritual like that, sitting down, preparing. And if you require some mood creator, such as music or chanting, that's what you do also. That sets up your mind for the day, but don't forget the day is the bulk of the time. So having done that, prepared nicely for the day, you conduct all your activities from the point of view of karma, yoga, karma being from action. And action doesn't happen without thought. Thoughtless action creates accidents. So what you do is, you make sure that you have what is now called mindfulness, what we call smarta, constant remembrance, bringing the attention back to the glory of the self. And the technique, of course, is observing what is going through the mental field and then putting in the wave system of time, things which are useful, coming under the classification of sattva. All purity, what makes something pure, it is the absence of self-interest or egocentricity or identification with body, mind, and its desires and its interests. So all activity can be selfless. We take time as a useful thing, as a useful means toward this fixing our attention, and make sure that we understand what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I come as time. Not with time, as time. Every second is the Lord with outstretched hands. Yeah, blank check, here's a second, put something useful for my child. Oh, yeah, I hate my neighbor's nose. All right, try again. Never mind. All the time going on like that. So we have to play a game like that, a game of guiding thought, where we insert the highest, noblest thoughts. Rigveda, may noble thoughts come to us from all sides, it says. So we have to constantly be aware of that and play a loving game like that. So that means karma yoga is a system which makes sure that all activities, mental and physical, at any given moment, have no tension within it and no stress, no disturbance in the mind. Taking every unit activity and putting our full attention into it and making it, we can combine it with a devotional attitude that says, let me add to this a sweetness that says, I am doing this as a flower offering for you. Here's my flower offering, this activity. Oh, I can't think of God if I'm doing activities and so on and so forth. It's all right. You can think of God before the activity and after the activity. And then it comes to another system of japa, constantly repeating the divine name throughout the day. Now that doesn't require so much concentration. It's just a habitual repetition because the name and the object that the name represents are the same thing. You know that if you call your mother on the phone, the mother responds. If you're calling a colleague at work, the colleague turns around. Hey, Colin, how are you? Person turns around. There's only one person there called Colin. So like that, when you call on the divine, it brings to mind the divine. And so that is done simply as a constant background repetition, so that my guru, when asked, how many times should we repeat our mantra? He tells us 24 hours of the day, even just before you fall asleep, as you fall asleep, as you wake up, as you take your bathing or your shower. It is all that constant thing. And then it is to be creative, imaginative in all your activities. Supposing you take a shower, then can you not imagine that you're standing under a divine waterfall in a tropical environment, engaging in the Lord's purifying glory? Can you not repeat? There's a mantra constantly repeated as a preparation in all pujas, making water, simple water, holy water, by invoking all the sacred rivers, the Sindhu, the Ganga, and so on, all of that. And you invoke all the rivers into the water. That's what makes it sacred. Can all water not be regarded in this way? So you start your spiritual activity by bathing. If you want a routine, everybody has to bathe, no doubt. So that is now a spiritual activity. These are constantly bringing your attention back. The yoga of constant practice. Or in Brother Lawrence's language, practicing the divine presence of God. Making God your traveling companion, making him your co-worker, making him your lunch companion, all the time, calling his name, and therefore he's there, or she's there, whatever your wish to do this. So dividing the day up into routine is important. So what is a mantra? It's a protecting thought. And therefore it will protect against your anxiety, it will protect against your fears, because this fear, in this example, let's say of rejection, has to be counterbalanced by this understanding that God will never abandon you or reject you. Who cares if anybody else tries to do that? The one that is always constant, your constant lover, providing digestive capacity, providing pocket money for useless thinking, providing heartbeat, all these things, an environment, the sunshine, all of these things for life. It's constant flow of the glory of love, constantly flowing toward you. Can you not at least say thanks a few times? So what is your spiritual practice? It is the practice of wonder, adoration, and thankfulness. All the time. So practice that, see what happens. Then maybe it is good in the middle of the day, before lunch, before eating, it's a good marker. Then that's a time where you can pause a little bit and offer your food to God and think think of the divine for a few moments. So if you break your day up into pre-planned sections where you sit, even if it's for 5 minutes, and in this way be the intimate companion of the divine, then the evening is there. And of course, you're always following your guru's direction in this. The most powerful thing that you have is the mantra that your guru gave during mantra diksha. And if you haven't got diksha, well, all of you here would have it. So anyway, to the general public, where this is going to be broadcast, if you don't have a mantra given by a competent teacher, then the repetition of Om is there. If you're an Orthodox Christian, that is from the Eastern Orthodox Church, you can repeat lovingly the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus, have mercy on me, simple prayer. Or if you're a Roman Catholic, you can repeat the prayers of the Rosary. All of these are systematic repetitions that help tune our attention into the glory of the Self or the Divine, what we call God. Do it with an element of joy and sweetness, thankfulness. In other words, make time for the most important living entity, the constant lover, which is called God. And make that your priority. And make sure that all these other activities are not abandoned, but incorporated into your spiritual life and practice. This is the way. All the negativity that comes up, such as doubt and fear, anxiety, worry, temptation, all of these things are neutralized by filling the mind up with divine joy. Do it every moment if you can. Increase it as you progress, as you go on. Progress means not a goal to be reached, but progression means the deepening of your tuning every day. Make that your constant practice. Make it regular. Never have a deviation from it. Even the Holy Mother, which we call Saraswati Devi, said, I missed meditation for a day or something like that. It was difficult for me to get back into it, you see, disturbing the regularity. And Ramakrishna used to, on at least one occasion, would have awoken the sleeping mother by pouring water under the door of the music, the Nahabat. So you see, keeping up this regularity is important. Imagine if you applied an irregular system to study. Imagine if you decided that, having agreed and made a contract that you'll arrive at work at, let's say, 9 o'clock in the morning and depart at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. One day you arrive at 7:30 and you find the doors are locked. Next time you arrive at 10:30. Next time you arrive at 12 noon. Next time you don't arrive at all. I don't think you'll last too long in this job. So make sure that our prana our energy is directed in a systematic way, in a flowing way. Don't allow any disturbance. That means we always have to remain alert. What is happening in our mental field at any given time? So what is Krishna's reply to this is difficult to control, it's turbulent, and so on and so forth? The first thing he does is agree. Yes, it is. So he says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, what does he say? Asamsayam mahabahu mao durnigraham kalam abhyasena tu kuntaya varagina cha grahyati. As the Lord said. I agree, doubtless. Doubtless, the mind is restless. Now every word in the Bhagavad Gita is pregnant with meaning. So he's addressing Arjun and says, O mighty armed. In other words, you're already armed. You don't require anything additional. You're already equipped. The mind is restless. That's a fact. I think we all acknowledge it. It's hard to control. Yes, thank you. But, now here's the formula, by practice. and non-attachment. It can be controlled. So what do we mean by practice? But he goes on to say that this concentration is hard to attain, and he concedes it, by a person who cannot control himself, control the senses. It means to control the desires, to recognize the desire on the one side and the fear on the other side that the senses respond to. So we have to acknowledge that maybe our formula will not give us the maximum result. Supposing I go into a state of depression because maybe I lost my job, or maybe my finances took a radical dip, maybe the stock market crashed or something like that, then if you follow the American movies, then the answer to this is to go and buy a tub of chocolate ice cream and consume the whole thing. And I think the movies are, of course, are American movies where chocolate ice cream is available. And but you have to deal with the consequences of that. You have to deal with diabetes and all the rest of it. It's not the answer, you know. And even if you think it's a good temporary solution, it is temporary. It doesn't last long and only creates maybe a desire for chocolate ice cream. A child knows it. What is heaven? Well, it's a chocolate ice cream. I see. All right, I'm going to supply heaven here today. Here's 1 ton of ice cream. Now, after a few mouthfuls, the child says, thank you, enough. I don't need the ton. So the answer is not in fulfilling our compensatory desires. The answer is not pulling away from our fears. The answer is what we discussed actually yesterday in terms of surrender, taking the clue up from Julian of Norwich. And the most important component, let us make a surrendering, give a surrendering attitude, a let go attitude that allows a flood of divine bliss to fill us. That is the only remedy. Taking refuge in devotional language to our most dearest and beloved, the one that sustains us and never abandons us, never rejects us. So it can be attained by that person who has controlled himself and who strives by the right means. And the right means are to be found in the principles, and they're to be found in scriptures, teachings of teachers, and so on. And the corresponding matching conscience, your own conscience. So the argument can go on. If you're unable to control yourself, and if your mind wanders away from this constant effort, and you're still possessed of faith, you're a good person. What is my fate? What end comes upon me? And having failed to attain perfection in this concentration or spiritual practice, then fallen from both the worldly success and the spiritual success, without support and bewildered in this path of spiritual activity, do I perish like a cloud rent asunder? And the Lord gives us comfort. He says, neither in this world nor the next is there destruction for any person who is rightly resolved, and for the doer of good, for somebody who is sincere in their practice, because that person never comes to grief. Now, this is not just an assurance, but we should have 100% comfort in this. It encourages us to go on with this. And so this is a very important passage extracted from the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which tells us, but it comes back to some definitions. What do we mean by practice? And what do we mean by non-attachment? These two things. Practice, as we've discussed, would be some setting up some regular routine and resolving, I will not deviate from it. continuing a habit. After all, you have a number of habits that you've had for a number of years and you don't deviate from. I would hazard a guess that everybody gets up, everybody bathes, everybody brushes their teeth, and everybody eats. These are habits, and we don't think twice that we have to cultivate anything different from it. And that's the whole meaning behind this word habit. It means a repetition, constant repetition, until it becomes second nature to us. It becomes a spiritual habit. Do it with a sense of adventure and fun, because if you take it as with a sense of disappointment, oh, I failed this time, I failed that time, that itself is a contributor to your negative habit. So you fill up with joy and you draw a line with the past and you accept that the future is unknown and don't worry about it. What's important is right here, right now. What we call the divine is right here, right now. It's contained where we sit in this moment. It comes as time, it comes as an opportunity, and it comes as a flow of love. This is hugely important. And then what is non-attachment? Well, when we become attached to the divine, we become detached automatically from other things. By example, how do you conquer your shadow? Your shadow representing in psychology fears and doubts and all these negative things, temptations. And how do you conquer that? Do you stamp on it? Do you ambush it? Do you shoot it in the shadow head? Do you give it a lecture? Stop following me, please. No, you face the sun and walk toward it. You face the glory of the divine self, or God, and you walk toward it. And then your shadow obediently follows like a servant. No need to even look at it. So that is our answer, that is fill up with the divine. That is how we fix our mind on the divine. We do it primarily through love. Because we are all emotional people. Fear is an emotion, doubt is an emotion, leads to an emotional reaction. Temptation is a feeling. Desire, fulfilling desires, very often is a compensation. Fulfilling desires is a formula that we've decided that we will use as a way toward joy and bliss, and it's not. And so very clearly, both in the Bhagavad Gita and the Kathopanishad, we're told there are two choices, there are two paths that we can decide to follow. We can simply do nothing and allow these unconscious instincts to take over, and that would be called tamas, darkness, or laziness, immobility, torpidity, laziness. All of these apply to this quality. Or we can take up our energy and enter life with full gusto, but still selfishness, and that will result in misery and unfulfillment. Or we can, with the same energy, take up this purity, this path of sattva, the preferable path as it is called, and allow that to saturate the mind to such an extent that it settles down and reforms our habit level. You see, when we started driving a car, we had to concentrate. We had to do things by numbers. We put our gear into first gear, what we think is first gear, and start going backwards and crash into the car behind or something. And then we have to, how can we do this? You have to look, the instruction will tell, instructor will tell you, you have to look in the front mirror, the side mirror on the left, and the side mirror on the right. Or if you're in other parts of Europe, let's say France, the other way around. The occasions when I do get into France, rare as they may be, I often get into if somebody is picking me up, I get into, or a taxi or something, I get into the driver's seat, thinking it's the passenger seat. See how habit is? Until we realize, oh no, it's the other side. So it's very complicated. Driving is complicated. Playing a musical instrument is complicated. The left hand is doing one thing and the right hand is doing another thing. And all these things in the feet in a manual car has to be, one foot has to do this, the other foot has to do that, then the arm has to be that. 100 things going on at the same time. Then we have to watch. Is there somebody rushing out in front of me? What is happening? You think that with all of these things going on, you can't coordinate anything. And yet you learn the habit of doing it so you can drive and talk and sing at the same time. How is it possible? Because you settled it down on the habit level. And you made a resolution. Everything starts with a resolution. I resolve that I will master this. With that strong resolution, you introduce a series of practices that introduce a habit. And with a series of practices, the next thing you do is you automatically take control of the vehicle, in this case, body and mind. And in doing that, you're also taking your attention away from the other things, which previously were hugely important and now become something like trivial pursuit. Just not that significant or important. It goes away by itself, just automatically. So this self-control is a lifetime exercise that we take in a sportful, happy, joyful way. We can call it a game with the divine, a delightful play, a dance with our beloved, who will help us and train us and provide the resources for us. And it's up to us then to use it. Having gained this resolution, we introduce a pattern of behavior. Now Ramakrishna narrows it down even further. He gives us a fourfold recommendation for the householder, and that is, sing the glories of the divine. People who know me, I tell them, please always joyfully repeat strong, true, wise, full, free, truth, beauty, goodness, love, harmony. And the glories of the divine are everywhere. A tree is not just a tree. It's a glorious exhibition. It's a glorious daughter or son of the Mother Earth. It has its complexity, which we didn't notice until we hone in our observation. And when we appreciate that a tree is much more than a tree, it has a spirit, and that all of life is glorious when we look at it, the glorious nature of nature itself. So always sing meaning not necessarily being an opera singer in the market or something like that. They'll arrest you, be a public nuisance. No, but inwardly let the heart soar, isn't it? With gratitude and wonder and thankfulness. Secondly, lovingly repeat God's name. That means japa. Lovingly. See, if you don't attach a feeling to it, it becomes a hollow, boring exercise. So you attach feeling to it. And thirdly, keep holy company. That can be done by coming to places like the ashram here, or visiting holy places, pilgrimages, and all this comes under the keep holy company. Keeping holy company, the holiest company you may have is your competent teacher. You can keep close to that, and serving your teacher is a wonderful way. Then fourthly, and of course keeping holy company in your mind is thinking constantly, constant practice of the presence of the divine is holy company. And then lastly, from time to time, says Ramakrishna, go into solitude. Solitude equals silence, equals stillness. We can do that by ourselves, going into a beautiful park or something, or mountain climbing or whatever it is. That's valuable. Or going on a retreat, something like that. But from time to time, go into solitude. And even the morning and evening meditation is like that. Even if you're sitting in a temple, or even if you're sitting with other members of a household, please remember there is actually only you and God. That's all. That's how you have to think of it. Only you and the divine, and form a personal relationship, a rapport with that. So that prayer becomes a dialogue initially, then a listening. It becomes an experience. Repetition of a mantra becomes a divine engagement, constantly keeping the beloved in your heart and in your mind. Keeping holy company becomes a delightful encounter where you can bathe in the divine presence and from time to time going into solitude, making this intimate connection, going on holiday with your divine. Taking a kind of honeymoon, if you will, with your divine, taking time out for your divine. These are the 4 important instructions. So that's fine. I hope I answered your questions. All right, then we'll leave it at that. Just to say that we intend to have a kind of pilgrimage to Dungannon, Sunday 27th, and arrange to be back here at the ashram in time for the evening arti at, let's say, 6:30. So today I will make out a program and I'll give it to Jean before I announce it. Jean McGuinness in Dungannon, Jean and Larry, so that the program is suitable. She'll be our hostess in Dungannon. So broadly speaking, we'll go up in a kind of convoy by car to Dungannon. And some events that Jean has in mind will be some of the, or at least 2 of the actors in the play, the Sister Nivedita play, Awakening of a Nation, which Jean wrote and acted in as a tribute to Sister Nivedita. And so there's some of the key actors, such as the lady who plays Sister Nivedita, Karen, and the one who plays Vivekananda will give some extracts, some readings from this play. We'll have some lunch, of course, and I may give a talk or something like that. We'll go in a procession to the plaque, which is on Scotch Street, and we may light a lamp or a candle there or something like that. We might say a prayer or something like that there. And I'm not sure if the visitor center is open on a Sunday. Maybe if it's there, then we'll take a tour there. And then have a cup of tea, because if you really want a spiritual routine, tea has to be included. And then we come back. So that's the 27th. If you can make it, any one of you, that's good. All right. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om